Hello, and welcome to Week 4 of the Introduction 2020 Faculty Perspective Series. We've designed these programs to allow you to see the tremendous depth and breadth of academic and research interests amongst our faculty, and preview many of the exciting things you can study here at the University of Oregon. Over the course of the summer, we are presenting faculty perspectives in 5 separate tracks that highlight the interdisciplinary nature of big questions. In our 5 programs today, we will feature the School of Law, 2 departments within the College of Arts and Sciences, and the Lundquist College of Business. As a reminder to students watching, be sure you complete your reflection on this program after we're done by visiting community.uoregon.edu. Additionally, the last 15 minutes of this session will be dedicated to answering your questions live on camera. If you're watching in Zoom, please use the Q&A feature on the bottom of your screen to ask our presenter your questions. Today's faculty perspectives in the COVID-19 track will tackle leadership during crisis and will be presented by University President and Professor of Law, Michael Schill. Welcome, President Schill.
Hey, Cora, and hello, everyone. I just want to welcome all of you to this virtual introduction event. And while I wish that you were all here and we were all here together talking to each other, I'm really excited about the opportunity today to speak to you a little bit about a very important topic, and that is leadership in the age of COVID-19. Now, I'm going to begin my talk today with a little bit of information about me and about the leadership roles that I've undertaken in my career. Then I want to talk a little bit about the attributes of good leadership. Some of this will be from a well-known book on leadership, and then some of it will be from my own experience. And then I'm going to conclude today's talk by having a little bit of a discussion about applying the standards of good leadership to COVID-19 and the situation that we all are in today. So first, let me talk a little bit about my background. I'm a first-generation college graduate, probably like a lot of you or a lot of your parents. Because of generous financial aid and scholarships that I received, I was able to graduate with an AB in public policy from Princeton, and then a JD, Juris Doctor, which is a law degree, from Yale Law School. And I am deeply, deeply grateful for the opportunities that I received as a student, that people gave me, and the education that I got, which made my life possible. And so that is part of what brought me into teaching, was this gratitude and the knowing that people can be transformed by higher education. And I want each and every one of you to have that same experience. Now, my scholarly area of interest, what I did research on, was housing law and housing policy. I looked at things like real estate law and policy, housing subsidy programs, and then housing discrimination in both the mortgage market and the for sale market. And the first major leadership role that I had was when I was a faculty member at NYU, and I started a center called the Furman Center for Housing and Urban Policy there. I ran the center. I had a staff of 1, and it turned out to be quite successful. And it led to UCLA Law making me an offer to become their dean. I became dean at UCLA Law. I served there for about 5.5 years. Then I went to the University of Chicago Law School, also as dean, for 5.5, 6 years. And then I was recruited to come here in 2015 as the 18th president of the University of Oregon. And I've been here, obviously you can count the years, I've been here in my 6th year as president here. Now, great universities like the University of Oregon, we transform lives, we generate opportunity, and we do research that makes the world a better place. And that's the reason that I'm doing what I'm doing. I care deeply about it. I care deeply about you. And I want you to have, as I said, all of the opportunities that this school offers, all of the opportunities that I had when I was a student. So let's start by talking a little bit about the nature of leadership. So this book up here, The Leadership Challenge by James Kouzes and Barry Posner, is a book that you'll see on probably every bookstore shelf on leadership. And you'd be surprised how many books there are about leaders. I think everyone in a position like me, when they retire, thinks they know something about leadership, and they write one of these books. But this book is one that people talk about quite a bit. And they set up a framework in the book that I think is helpful. It's called The 5 Practices of Exemplary Leadership. And I just want to summarize briefly the points that they make. So these are the 5 on the slide, the 5 principles. The first is model the way. And according to Kouzes and Posner, great leaders need to be clear about their core values. And then what they need to do is they need to model that by backing up their words with action. When you're a leader, you can't be hypocritical, because that will breed cynicism. And people don't follow people who they don't trust and who they're cynical about. So what you need is you need to model the sort of behavior that you think a leader should have, and that's authentic to you. Secondly is to inspire a shared vision. A strong leader needs to develop a vision for the future, where he or she wants to take the institution. But that's not enough. So you get the vision, but then what you need to do is you need to inspire people. You need to get people to buy into your vision. You need to get them to come on board. So it's creating the vision and then inspiring people to follow the vision and adopt the vision. The third element of this framework is that they call it challenge the process. So according to Kouzes and Posner, great leaders change the status quo. They adopt, they innovate, they change what is going on at an institution and the way things are done. They recognize good ideas, and what they do is they aren't afraid to challenge the status quo. Fourthly, they enable others to act, and that's really important. Great leaders put together great teams, and that's harder done than you might imagine. You put together really talented people, but that's not enough. What you need is you need to empower those people. You need to let them know that you'll have their back. You need to make them understand that they shouldn't be afraid to take actions, that you won't undercut them in their actions, that you trust them. So enabling other people to act is incredibly important, and I'll come back to that in a moment in terms of my own experience. The last part of their framework of the 5 practices of exemplary leadership is what they call encouraging the heart. And what that means is great leaders care about others. They make the folks on their team feel appreciated. They celebrate achievements of people on their team. They reach out, and they also reach the people that they're leading beyond their team. So they try to operate not only from here, but from here. So that's incredibly important. Let me tell you a little bit about my own experience as a leader. As I said, I was dean at 2 institutions, 2 great law schools, and now president of a great university, the University of Oregon. A lot about what I just told you that Kouzes and Posner write really resonates with me. Perhaps the most important aspect, as I mentioned a moment ago, is putting together a great team. In each of my leadership positions at each of these 3 institutions, I was able to either inherit or hire great people to my team. And while I sometimes get in the weeds, I've been called by some people a micromanager. I don't think that's right, but I do get in the weeds. And while I do that, I also give people latitude. People know that that they should go out, they have my authority to operate. In addition to empowering them, what I also do is they know that I care about them. They know that I care about their families. They know that I care about who they are, about their private lives, as well as their lives at the university. I'm not afraid to praise them. I think if people do a good job, it's important that you tell them that they did a good job. It's important that you let them know that you cherish them and that they are incredibly important people. It's also important that they know that they should push back on you and there'll be no bad feelings. I mean, the number of times people on my team have said, no, don't do that. You shouldn't do that. I mean, I couldn't remember, I couldn't count them. They probably range in the hundreds or thousands of times. It's incredibly important that you empower people on your team to put up a stop sign, to say, no, don't go there. And you might decide that they're wrong, but they should feel comfortable doing that. The last thing about putting together a great team is I share the accomplishments, my accomplishments, the accomplishments of the institution, they're not my accomplishments. They're our accomplishments. We are a team. So you need to say over and over again, and it's the truth, that where we are, how we've done, all of us have gotten there together. It is our combined efforts that have gotten us there. So that's the elements of what I think are important with regard to a great team. Secondly, what I think is really important is to make your expectations clear. Always when you're leading, when you finish a meeting, when you finish asking someone to do something, be clear about what you want. Be specific. Don't let them guess. Give them concrete plans or ask them for concrete plans. Give them concrete goals and give them ideas about how you're going to measure success. It's incredibly important for them to know what they need to do, but it's also important for you to hold them accountable so they know what you expect and then they can deliver on that. It's also important that other people can hold you accountable for what you do. Concrete, measurable objectives are incredibly important. The third thing I want to talk about in terms of my leadership style is I tend to find it very useful to bend the culture but not break it. And let me tell you a little bit what I mean by that. As Kouzes and Posner state, strong leaders don't tread water. They move an institution forward. They break the status quo. Yet many institutions, just like many universities, right, we're an institution, are resistant to change. People are used to doing things in a certain way. Cultures, internal cultures, are persistent. So when you come in as a new leader, you can't come into a place and sort of say, oh, I can't stand this culture, I'm going to do things entirely differently. That is a sure way to fail. People will think you're not respecting the culture or the institution. They'll think you're not respecting them. So, but what you can do is think of it as a rubber band. You can change the culture, you can bend the culture, you can stretch the culture, and thereby move it in different directions. But you always have to be careful to bend, but as you all know, with a rubber band, you can take it too far and then you break the rubber band. So you always have to operate within that idea. Now, for example, I came to the University of Oregon 5.5 years ago. We have a tremendously collaborative culture here. Everybody wants to work together. Everybody wants to be consulted. Everyone wants to give their opinion. That is terrific, right? I mean, you want people to feel engaged. But at a certain point, you also have to make a decision. So bending the culture here meant listening to everybody, but then calling an end to it at a certain point and letting everybody know that you were going to need to move forward, and really bring them together with you. So there's lots of different things that I've experienced at my institutions, but bend the culture, don't break it. Also, work harder than anyone else. Sometimes we grow up. I remember when I was in school, some of the cool kids in school used to always say, don't let them see you sweat. Make it seem easy. I'm sure all of you have been in situations like that. Actually, that's terrible advice. People love to see their leaders sweat. They love to see their leaders working on their behalf. So don't hide it. Let people know you're working hard for them. They will appreciate it because they want you working for them. They want you caring about them. So let them see you sweat. Work harder than anybody else. Related to that is do your homework. You should be the most informed person in the room when you go into a meeting or when you address people. I can't tell you the number of times when people have said to me, "Oh my God, you really did your research." Well, of course I did my research. Why wouldn't I do my research? It shows I care about a subject. It shows I have a mastery of the subject. So do your homework. Be prepared. Don't be surprised. Also, importantly, play your role like you would play a chess game. Think about moves down the road. Don't just think about the next move that you're going to make. Don't just say, then my next decision is going to lead me here. Think about your moves 5 steps down the road. Where are you trying to go? What are the steps along the way that will get you there? Also, what happens if you take a step and it leads you in really not the direction you think you're going to go? Have it planned out how you would adjust to that. So think of decisions, think about how you run an institution as a leader like a chess game. Be prepared for curves, be prepared for an unforeseen move by another person. All right? Another element, I think, of good leadership, at least for me, is to know your weaknesses. Know what you're not good at, as well as know what you're good at. But it's more important to know what you're not good at, and then try to correct it. So for me, I'll tell you what one of my biggest weaknesses is. One of my biggest weaknesses, sometimes when people come to me and they give me an idea that I think is crazy, or they ask me for something that is crazy, I might respond to them, are you kidding? I might get a little angry, I might get a little bit, I might tell them exactly what I feel. That's actually not a great strategy. You want to actually have an opportunity to think a little bit, and you want the person who is saying that they don't know that their idea doesn't make sense. They don't know that they're being perhaps overly ambitious in what they want. So what you want to do is you want to show respect to them. So knowing that I have that tendency, what I tend to do is let people know that they probably should send me what they want to talk about in advance. Or alternatively, that they may want to go to my chief of staff before they come to me, and then he'll brief me on what they're going to say. Or he'll provide sort of a sounding board to them about what I'm likely to think. And I find that works really well, because even when they come to me with ideas that I'm not going to love at first sight, I have thought about them, and they can get my best response, which they deserve, not my first response. Another part of being a good leader, at least for me, and I think probably for everyone, is be honest. Just be honest with people. But one thing that again, another aspect of my leadership or my style that actually can get me into trouble is you don't have to over disclose, right? You want to be honest with people, but you don't have to get into sort of every detail of what you think. like if you think someone's wrong about something, you can pretty much leave it at that. Tell them that you be honest with them, but don't say that's the craziest thing I've ever heard, or really, are you out to lunch or something like that. You want to be honest, but you don't want to be insulting. You want to be honest, but you don't. Sometimes you should quit while you're ahead, and which is another way of saying don't necessarily over disclose. You want to show respect. A lot of what I've been talking about is really just pure and simple respect. You want people to feel that you respect them, even if you don't agree with them. Another element of leadership, at least for me, is don't be the smartest person in the room. No one really likes the smartest person in the room. And this isn't an intention with let them see you sweat. People love to see people working hard, but they don't love someone who seems like they're a know-it-all. And I've never had that problem because I've never been the smartest person in any room. But, for those of you who tend to be the smartest person in the room, be a little bit modest. Don't lord it over people. Also, I mentioned this earlier, always be prepared to change your mind when you're convinced you're wrong. Now, there's a lot in that. You shouldn't change your mind every moment, right? People won't know what to bank on. They won't know what you mean. They won't trust what you say. But when you make a decision, even if it seems a well-considered decision, if you find facts that are different than what you thought, if the circumstances of the world change and you need to change your mind, don't be afraid to change your mind. All of us have had that experience. Be honest about it. And don't pretend that you're not changing your mind. Let people know that you're changing your mind, but explain why you're changing your mind. Give reasons for what you do. People will respect it. I think some people who are leaders think that's a sign of weakness. I actually think it's a strength. If people change their mind and say, boy, I made a mistake now, or the facts have changed, here's what I'm going to do. So be ready to do that. Be generous. I mentioned that a moment ago. If someone asks you for something and you're going to do it, don't do it in a grudging way. Do it in a way that makes them affirmed. Because why do something nice for someone if you're only going to take away some of the niceness by making them feel bad about it? I mean, I have been in leadership positions. I know of leaders who have done really great things for people, but the people themselves don't think they've had great things done for them because of the way that the leader did it. Made them feel bad about what they got. So be generous and do it the right way. Develop personal loyalty. That is incredibly important in life. It's very, very important in leadership. You want people who will run through walls for you. Now, part of getting there is they know that you will run through walls for them. Really important to be surrounded by people who have loyalty. Praise them. Be fair to them. Be honest. Always keep your word. One of the things I learned in my first day as dean at UCLA was never saw off someone's branch. If they go out on a limb, right, and you have told them to go out on a limb, the worst thing you can do is saw it off on them. So if you tell someone you're going to support a decision they make, don't change your mind on them without talking to them and getting them to agree. Or what I tend to do is if someone's going to go off on a controversial decision, I warn them ahead of time and I say, I might change my mind. Do you really want to do that? But be fair with them. Be honest. And also, don't ask someone to do something that you wouldn't do yourself. That's not nice. It's also not what a good leader does. Care about them, care about their lives. I've already talked about that. And lastly, based upon my experience, be focused. I am very, very focused. I have clear objectives, and almost everything I do, every talk I give, 3 priorities. Lists should have 3 elements to them. I learned that sometime in like elementary school. It gets too complicated if it has lots of more elements. Be clear, be concise, but also repeat them often. Repeat them often. So for me, for the University of Oregon, when I started as president, October of my first year, I gave a speech. And I said, we are going to be a great teaching institution that cares about student success. We are going to be a great research institution that wants to move the world with our research. And we are going to be a diverse and inclusive institution which brings people together of all races, religions, all groups together. And what we're going to do is we're going to make them feel that they belong at this institution, no matter whether they're gay or straight, no matter whether they're black or white, no matter whether they're Jewish, Muslim, or Christian. We bring them together. That's what a great institution is. And I kept saying it. Every speech I gave for 5 years, I still do. I list out those 3 objectives so people now can remember them. All right, lastly, I want to turn my last topic before I take questions from all of you to COVID-19. COVID-19, as I'm sure all of your lives have been turned upside down, and I am so sorry for that. But COVID-19, everybody's turned upside down. And I'm sure you're reading in newspapers, if you read newspapers online, if you're online, watching TV, universities are going through quite a difficult time where people are making decisions, having to roll back decisions, and leadership is being tested in ways that never before tested before. Because the crisis is one that's we've never seen something like this before. So part of the reason why this is such a tough problem for leaders is that many of the objectives that we're pursuing, which are value-based objectives, many of these objectives conflict with each other. And that's where it's hard, right? Because you believe in this, but it's hard to do both at the same time. So let's talk about some of the objectives and values. Safety, all right? Health and safety. Safety should always be priority number 1. But it's interesting with COVID-19 because for most of the students who come here, most of the students are going to be between 18 and maybe 24. COVID-19 will make you sick, but it isn't going to endanger your lives. In addition, there are risks out there everywhere. For many of our students, it's a greater risk to stay home than it is to come to Eugene, where the incidence of COVID-19 is incredibly low compared to other places in the country where our students come from. So even though there's a risk of being in a university, living near each other, where you are is not very safe for many of the students. So that's a little bit of a conflict. Also, for college presidents, university presidents, we have to worry about more than just the students. We're the president of the whole institution. So I have to worry about my faculty. I have to worry about the staff who clean the spaces at the university. I have to worry about the dining services people who prepare your meals and serve your meals, right? I'm like a mayor of a little town, and their risks are going to be much higher. So what I have to do is balance all of that. I also have to worry about the people in the town who aren't part of the university, but who are implicated, right? We bring people to the city, and they're going to find it different. Now, many of them, most of them, I would imagine, want you all here because you're the lifeblood of the town. We miss you. Eugene feels empty without students here. But again, you have multiple different interests that may have different objectives. So you have to balance all of that. And you're seeing that going on university after university. also economics and jobs. So I'm president of the university, and I am responsible for the welfare, the economic welfare of thousands of families, right? We employ thousands of people. We also create business for other businesses in town. Thousands of people, tens of thousands of people rely on the University of Oregon. So if we weren't going to open, which is something that every university is considering right now, we're talking about hundreds of jobs, thousands and thousands of jobs that will be at stake. Many of them would go without food, shelter, and health care. But of course, that's important, but so is public health and safety. So if we felt that we were endangering public health and safety, those two objectives would come together. And as I said, our first priority is health and safety. Lastly, we all believe, the reason I'm in this job is that I believe in the value of in-person education. I believe that part of what we learn is we learn from each other. You all will learn from professors, but importantly, you are going to learn from each other. Some of the folks here are going to meet the first black person they've ever met in their lives, right? Some people are going to meet the first Jewish person or the first gay person they've ever met in their lives. Some here might meet the first Republican they've ever met in their lives or the first Democrat. That's what education is. It's from learning from each other. And so we believe that bringing people back to Oregon, bringing people into the university, even if some of the classes are remote or a lot of the classes are remote, is serving that purpose. We want people to get to know each other. So we are really very committed to having a robust life here for students, both in the class, out of the class, online, not online, in the residence halls, not in the residence halls. So lastly, and this is lastly, it can be hard right now to be inspired by a shared vision. And we understand that. People are fragile right now. You're all experiencing it. We're not used to dealing, no one's used to dealing with the level of uncertainty that we're all experiencing. Will the virus keep going? Will it get worse? Will it get better? What will open? What won't open? How will that affect people's decisions? We're used to trying to control as much as we can control. Leaders want that, right? Leaders want to control everything. But we have to sort of say, actually the virus controls things. We can respond to them. COVID-19 has also put a great deal of pressure on people and their families. Many of them are cooped up, not having experienced anything like that. Many of them are away from loved ones. Many of them are having financial reverses if they've lost their jobs. We have almost a 15% unemployment rate. When you add all of the racial strife that we have experienced, it has really created a period of fragility. And then we layer on our national politics, which is, to say it's tense, to say it's fraught is an understatement. And I'm not going to take one position, say anyone's responsible for that in today, but it is just you layer upon layer upon layer, that people are fragile, and we have to understand that. So at moments like this, I think the best leadership strategy is to be authentic, to be modest, to be humble, to be honest, to let people know, and I'm letting you all know, I don't have all the answers, but I want you to understand and I want you to believe that I am trying to do my very best at what I'm doing. It's critical at a moment like this to listen to people, to respect them, to take their views seriously. And above all, a leader in the COVID-19 era needs to be able to change her mind or his mind if the facts change underneath them. You have to be nimble. You can't have an ego. You have to be willing to go where the virus goes. Now, good leadership, as all of you understand, is needed more in the era of COVID-19 than ever before. So I'd like to thank you all for listening to that. I'm really super excited to answer your questions. Cora?
Thank you so much. We do have a few minutes for questions, and we've got a couple of really great ones here from students and some additional questions. First off, Sophia wants to know, what's the biggest challenge that almost all leaders need to overcome?
Sophia, that's a great question. As I said a moment ago, I think your ego is one of the challenges that you need to overcome. You need to I think it's called servant leadership. It's not about you, the leader. It's not about your ego. It's not about having everybody agree with you, or it's not about it's not about your next job. It's about serving the people who you lead. And that's important. It's listening to what people need. It isn't necessarily doing what people say they need, right? Because as I mentioned a moment ago, there's so many stakeholders in a university. I can't satisfy everybody. But what I need to do is I need to listen to everybody. And Cora, I'm gonna take the prerogative of having the microphone and say, here's really the biggest challenge is, basically leaders get where they are because people think they're good. So two aspects of that. One is, don't believe your own publicity. You're not as good as people say you're good at. And people generally, want to make you feel good. But also, when you're a leader, you're going to make people unhappy. And some of them are going to say things about you that you don't like. And what you can't do is, and I've been guilty of this, so I got to say, I haven't mastered this one. You can't let it run your life or ruin your life. You can't go home at night and stew over what people say. You can't, like right before you go to sleep, think about it or wake up in the middle of the night. What you have to do is understand that you're doing the best that you can do, if that's true, and if it's not, you better up your game. Do the best you can do, understand it, and explain it, and then close your eyes and go to sleep, because you need that sleep.
Absolutely, to continue to be a good leader. Jacob actually has a really great question that you started to touch on as you were wrapping up. Jacob wants to know, how can leaders show that they have changed their mind on policies due to the ever-changing science of COVID-19 without their leadership being undermined?
So you're seeing it every day, and I respect people. I mean, you're seeing, if you're in places like California, I mean, if you look at some of the schools in California or Florida, or, I don't know what Arizona's done, where all of a sudden the incidence of COVID-19 has increased, and where you realize you just can't open. Even though you wanted to open, even though you said you were going to open, you just got to make the decision and explain it to people and give the reasons. And I don't think leaders in those places are undermined. What would undermine a leader is if they went ahead, pig-headed, just because they had made the decision and people got sick. Lots of people get sick. And we have to understand also, people are going to get sick. This is a disease wherever you are, you could be anywhere. People are going to get sick. But the point is, what you don't want to do is endanger people. So people are going to be making the decisions. As long as they're making the decisions for the right leaders, I would encourage, for the right reasons. Another way of saying this, and I love the word grace, because, and I'm not because it's a religious term, but I think we need to give each other grace at a moment like this. We need to be understanding with people. People are trying to do their best in a very hard situation, and we want our leaders to do their best. And what we don't want is them to feel they have to do something because they said they were going to do it. That's bad leadership.
Thank you. Sophie wants to know, how can UO students demonstrate leadership on campus in response to the pandemic?
Oh, Sophie, great question. So there's a ton, and you're going to see some of it when you get here. So we're going to have leadership is going to go from the very smallest level. Your floors in the residence halls have leadership. They have elected leaders. And then there's the ASUO, which is our student or government, run for student government, engage in student government. There are leadership opportunities if you're not interested in student government. We have hundreds of student organizations, and each one of those needs leaders. And so pitch in what you can do. We have social service agencies. We have nonprofit organizations. We have ways in which there's such need in our community and the communities around us. And by the way, we have an election coming. Get out there, get people to vote, call people for whatever party you're supporting. Leadership opportunities there. We also have a leadership center here, the Holden Center, where you can actually spend time thinking about leadership and learning about leadership. Sort of the things that I was talking about in the first part of my talk. They have lots of opportunities for you to sign up. There are courses in leadership in the business school and elsewhere. So there's just a multitude of opportunities, and no one style is going to be perfect for everyone. So I just gave you my leadership style. That's for me. I'm a particular type of individual. Other people are different, and they'll have to find their leadership styles, which is one of the reasons to study it and think about it. Great question.
So last question, how often, I know you often sit down and have personal conversations with students. Have any of their stories about their experience with leadership opportunities here at the UO stood out to you as remarkable?
Yeah, the stories that I am always amazed by, and we have really, really amazing students. I'm amazed by students who undergo hardship and are able to be resilient and come back from that hardship and then move forward. And, they may not become head of the ASUO, but they're leaders. They're taking their own lives and leading it forward. They're helping other people. Many of them turn around and help other people. And we had this amazing, I'll just tell you very briefly, we had this amazing young woman who was a student who I believe was head of her sorority. And she was hiking in the mountains and fell. I don't know what was the cause of it, broke her back. And she was paralyzed. And she came back, and she was our graduation speaker. Mm-hmm. And literally, tears were coming down my eyes. And she continues to be a leader. And so that's the type of leadership that I hope none of you have to do, but that's a sort of thing I remember and that I find inspiring, that if she could come back, we can all come back from our setbacks, because each one of us is going to have a setback in our life. Many of us will have multiple setbacks, and we need to be resilient. We need to get through it. So I find that inspiring.
She's very inspiring. We both got a chance to work with her quite a bit. Thank you, President Schill. That's all the time that we have for this session. For those of you who are watching, thank you for your time today. It's always fun to have you here, and even though we're virtual, it's nice that you're here joining us today. Again, for you students, be sure to log on to community.uoregon.edu to submit your reflections and stay on track to complete introduction. Other ways that you can continue to stay on track to be ready for fall include uploading your selfie for your UO ID card. We will be mailing those to you in August. We want you to check your @uoregon.edu email address every single day. We want you to keep an eye out for information about room selection in university housing. That's coming up pretty quickly. Complete your financial aid checklist, and be sure you've set reminders to have your final high school transcript sent to the UO and submit your immunization records. There's lots to do. For links for all of these things and to find out more on how to complete, I encourage you to visit our website at orientation.uoregon.edu, and you can click on the next steps to find those links. For questions, you can also email us at orientation@uoregon.edu or text us at 541-346-1159. If you'd like to learn more about academic advising at the UOO, I encourage you to listen to today's episode of Flock Talk from your favorite podcast platform or from flocktalk.uoregon.edu. Thank you again for your time, and to you, President Schill, thank you for helping our new ducks get ready for the fall.
Thank you, and I can't wait to see you all.